Well, Mr. Frank Afan joins us now. He's a legal practitioner to further examine our judiciary 54 years on. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Well, the judiciary, a very vital component in any democracy, including ours. What's your perspective on this? Because, I mean, you have people who have got different perspective, but would you say we are better than we were, or what?
Well, I've just watched that report that you've played out there, and it situates the situation in the judiciary in its perspective. I listened to a former president, the president of the NBA, Olisa Pakova, giving the history of the judiciary. We were far better than we are now. In the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, maybe the early 90s. I think we have relapsed. We have gone too backward. As you heard him say, the judiciary guarded its jurisdiction remarkably, even in the face of the military dictatorships that we had. He mentioned the Lekome case there. That case, it threatened the power of the military government, as it were, to make laws. They subordinated, at the time that matter was said, the Constitution of Nigeria subordinated the decree of the military government until the then military government came to enact what they called the Constitution Suspension and Modification Decree. And we had remarkable, cerebral, strong, fearless, nationalistic judges. We had, in those days, Justice Udoma on the bench. We had Adetokunbo Ademola. We had Justice Elias. Remarkable, well-trained, strong, fearless judges who believed in their learning, who believed in the position of law as of then. I think we have relapsed. I think quite a lot of things have gone wrong with our judiciary. And indeed, to get round to the question that you've asked, I could as well say, do you have three arms of government in a democracy like we do now? You have the executive, you have the legislature, you have the judiciary. The judiciary is supposed to be the one that sits on top of the executive and the legislature. If you have the judiciary doing well, then the democracy of any nation functions well. If the judiciary collapses, as we're almost seeing now, the democracy in that country collapses. Indeed, the judiciary holds the string of civilization in any nation that seeks to say, look, we want to have a democracy. We want to have a civilian government. The democracy of any nation is as strong as the judiciary. Finish. If we are doing poorly as a civilian democracy, it's because of our judiciary.
When did we get it wrong?
Apparently, it could be maybe at the intrusion of the political executive, the intrusion of the political executive into the judiciary. I don't know where it actually started, but it would appear like over the times, the executive has grown larger than life in the affairs of our nation.
No, but if, as you highlighted, underscoring the comments made by some of the former presidents of NBA that we guarded the jealousy at the time against those, even military intrusion. So why drop the ball for a democratic dispensation?
Well, I don't know whether it has to do with the personnel behind the judiciary. Because, I mean, you had people that, indeed, even the military juntas that were in charge, the strongmen as they were called, I mean, they feared to dare the judges of the Supreme Court or even the High Court. These were very firm judges. They were hardly seen. I mean, you could see the power of the law, the power of the courts behind the actions of the government in those days. So much that even with the guns that were ruling, the people with the guns had to check themselves a lot when it got to matters of the judiciary. And they never attempted Well, maybe they did try, but they were resisted. They never attempted to get involved with, the manipulation of the judiciary. I think because the personnel behind them could resist, and they stood their ground. I think we could get that back if we have the personnel men of strong moral integrity who can resist the overwhelming influence of the executive and the legislature as we have now.
What about the internal cleansing mechanism of the judiciary?
Well, I don't know how much effect has it had over the times. I haven't seen much. I know that there have been such attempts, but I haven't seen much effect that it has had over what we have, over the workings of the judiciary. It hasn't had much effect. If it were to be done, in fact, you have a complete revolution of judges being removed. As it stands now, it will appear that even the quiet way the thing is being done may need to be reviewed. We need to know names of judges who are under investigation. If they are at all under investigation, we should ensure that they don't even sit in court. I mean,
wouldn't that be proclaiming them guilty before?
No, not at all. Because the judiciary is such a highly positioned institution in government, in the organization of a society. You need to expect that the judiciary, like Caesar's wife, must be above board. So there must be nothing like a suspicion, around a judge who sits. There must not be anything like investigation around a judge who sits at all. I mean, we just have to show, the judiciary has to show example. It has to show example in the sense that you couldn't even point an accusing finger at anybody who sits there as a judge. We have to raise the bar. We have to raise the standard of investigation. It cannot just be as it is now.
Were you shocked to hear the CJN's comment about judiciary workers in terms of the corruption going on there?
No, I'm not. I wasn't. She was just saying what many of us had been saying over the years. I'm sure she had said such a long time before then. That would have been the umpteenth time that she would have said it. Because it's a common experience that you see if you step into the court, you want to swear an affidavit. So from that level, anything you want to do in court, you find that you run into bottlenecks here and there. And we are being told that, well, that's how the Nigerian society is like. Well, if the Nigerian society is like that, the judiciary must be an exception. Because if it reforms, if it gets itself out of that, then the rest of the society will follow suit. I mean, the judiciary has to set a standard. The judiciary has to put the music there for the rest of the country to follow.
I think that you took the question right out of my mouth, because someone will say that the judiciary does not operate in isolation. It is a part of society, and you've said that you've talked about the rest of society being like that. So is our judiciary a reflection of what it is that we're saying? Yeah. And what exactly is it that has fed that? Could it be impunity, the fact that you can do it and nobody's going to hold you to account? One,
and the other is that the arms of government have to come alive with their duties. I'm a lawyer, as you have introduced, and I know the position of law, the position of the institution called the judiciary in the organization of society. It has to call the shots. It has to break down the mores that are very poor within the society. We expect the judiciary to be different. I mean, it just has to be different. If it is firm, if it is forthright, if it is full of integrity, if you go there, things are not done like they do in the ordinary society, then they can break down the rest of the society and we can get it right.
You've spoken about the intrusion or the overwhelming influence of the executive on all the other arms of government, legislature, particularly the judiciary. What exactly did the executive do that you would say has had undue influence on the judiciary? Is it a constitutional role they played, or was it an external influence that the Constitution did not specify?
Well, I think you have all the institutions and their duties well spelled out in the Constitution. But, well, you expect the neutrality of institutions. For example, you have the presidency, the president, you have the governors, you have their cabinets and all of that. and you have the different political parties as it were now. But, I didn't want to confine myself to the situation today. I wanted to go as far back as it could be. The neutrality of the institutions that you have around is very, very important. So how neutral are the police departments, for instance, the police? How neutral would the DSS be? How neutral will the army be if called upon to, execute a judgment or a situation that, hampers the executive, for example? It gets to a point that you have a judgment by a judiciary against the executive, for example, and you expect that it will be executed, and it just cannot be. You find that the neutrality that you expect for the enforcement of such a judgment doesn't just exist. The executive has a large pool of agencies that executes it. You have them. Remarkably, you can't count them. And each thinks that, look, my duty is to the president, or maybe the presidency, my duty is to the executive. But really, the Constitution doesn't say that their duty is to the executive. Their duty is to Nigeria as a state. So we expect that in the course of events, the agencies of government will learn to be neutral. There was a time that I had a private feeling that we should begin to make a case for the judiciary to have its own special forces to enforce its laws and rulings and decisions, Because they make a judgment and they'll have to rely on the forces of the executive to execute. The police force was supposed to be a neutral body that is not besorted, as it were, to any arm of government, but they act more like executive agencies.
It's interesting you proposed that, because I'm thinking that the legislature too might want one to
no, because
to execute their resolutions.
No, they don't need that, because it is the judiciary that interprets. It is the arbiter between the arms of government, and because it is an arbiter, it needs a way of getting sure that the arbitration that they do has effect. So you start from having a strong, well-to-do judiciary that is above suspicion, that is above debt. You just have to get that. If it has to be by personnel, oh wow, lots of reforms have been contemplated that perhaps we have missed some of the details that we could go for in having a judge, appointed, for instance.
Just hold it right there. We'll have to take a quick break, but we'll come back and continue. It's an interesting point you're about to make, so please join us again.